Hey, welcome back. So the main thing I learned on my first video is that this webcam doesn't really cut it anymore. At this distance, the focus is just horrible. So I'm going to try to use more of my phone cameras. This is a Logitech C922 web camera, and it's several years old, so I think it's time that I get an upgrade. Today I'm going to cover the interior of the ship, so please enjoy, and let's get started. So I wanted to start this off by discussing the signature piece. A lot of the MOCs have a signature piece that they base the model on. So in the last video, I operated the wings by placing some of the minifigures into the cockpit. Well, this was one of the first ideas I had, and this idea was really exciting, so it drove me to make the model throughout. Tubrick's signature piece for his model was the cockpit of the Razor Crest, and this has the perfect size for the cockpit of the Fondor Haulcraft in the closest shape. Well, I used that same cockpit, but I used the generic version without the Razor Crest printing because my ship is significantly bigger, and taking away the printing makes the cockpit look bigger as well. But my signature piece was not the cockpit. What it actually is the eye, or the triple eye, that's in the cockpit. Now this is the piece that's closest to the droid mod triple eye that we see in the show. So the part that I used for the Lego version is the powered up color and distance sensor, which is part number 88007. The three lenses in this part are the closest thing I could find to the three eyes droid mod head that we see swiveling around in the cockpit on the show. However, in my case, it's also used to control the operation of the ship, and sitting the different characters with different colors in the captain's chair will trigger the eye to cause different actions in the program. I'm going to spotlight a couple of important parts during this video, and so I'll focus now on the cockpit. So there was a Reddit user whose account has since been deleted, but they designed a Fondor Haulcraft flight deck, which is the cockpit, and this really inspired mine. Now their cockpit was really large, and it was more like a diorama, but I still wanted to get in all the cool details that they had into my build. My limiting factor was the fact that the cockpit piece was only 6 wide. However, I was able to get in some of the essential details, including the special chair that we see in the show, and the steering yoke. And finally, I'm really proud about the hyperspace joysticks, which are similar to the joysticks that we've seen in other Star Wars ships throughout the history. Okay, I want to show now how we get into the interior of the ship. You start by using the cockpit to extend the wings out to the side. So like a vulture, the wings of the Haulcraft protect it while it's parked. So to get to the interior, we have to sit the right kind of luthen in the cockpit, and that will indicate that it's safe for the ship to launch. When the ship launches, it also turns on all the lights on both the exterior and the interior. After the wings have opened up, then we can remove the panels from the top one at a time. The most dominant panel is this 4 central section. Now this is similar to the hood of a car, and it has a retention rod, as you can see, and that keeps it open while you're playing with the interior. This panel is on a loose axle, so you can actually also remove it completely. But for now, we'll show the first panels give the easiest access to the control hubs, the powered up control hubs, which are placed in these locations so that they disturb the design as little as possible, and they're still accessible. There's very limited places to put them in the ship, so after a lot of scrutiny, I decided this was the best place. Now, one thing I'm really proud about is the amount of pass-through areas. So the cockpit is one of 3 very important pass-through areas. In almost none of the Millennium Falcons built in Lego, even the UCS Falcon, were able to pass through from the main hold of the ship to the cockpit. Well, this part is featured frequently during the show, right? So I really wanted to preserve it and have a pass-through. So here we can look from the cockpit down the hallway to the rest of the ship. Another important pass-through area is the docking hatch behind the cockpit. So it's important that there's an actual window here, and this is where Andor can peek out into space when he's in the ship. So I implemented this window with my design, and it's visible even when the roof is on, because the lights inside the ship can shine out through this window. So if you stay until the end of the video, I'll show you the third and very important pass-through. I came up with this design concept for the ship, which I called A Tale of Two Luthans. And the most important idea in designing this hullcraft was Luthen's split personality. So to operate the eye sensor, I decided that the red Antiquities Luthen means stop, while the green Espionage Luthen means go. So I decided to make the two lateral rooms of the ship reflect this split personality. Now, these two rooms are mirror images of each other, which it's most evident from where they have these two little closets where we have clothing respective of each one of his personalities. The red Luthen side, on the starboard side, is a slice of his antiquity shop, while the green Luthen side, on the port side, is purely functional. And there you'll find like the bedroom and a couple of very practical computer consoles. So I wanted to do the second spotlight on this costume room and the museum. So the costume room is a very important part in the show because it's where we see that Luthen can change his personality. So to begin, on this model you open the sliding door, just as we see in the show. And I noticed from the start that where Luthen has his vanity mirror, there's almost no space in the ship because the height in that part of the ship, it reduces as we go towards the outside of the starboard side. So I decided to put the vanity mirror on the other side, closer to the inside. And I decided to use this old-fashioned fence piece to create the Star Wars style lighting that we see in that room. Now that room is white and it's uncharacteristic. It doesn't match the rest of the ship. It's like fancier than the rest of the ship. So creating this room here in this space made me realize something else that's kind of like a secret of the show. It's that this area of the ship is the same place where if you were going to enter in through the entrance ramp, you would arrive at this part of the ship. So it's kind of impossible to have both of those places in that same space. That I decided to lean into it and make this an area where Luthen can transport his antiquities. And so this is like a little slice of his museum shop inside the ship. So that made this part of the MOC super fun because it allowed me to place all sorts of trinkets in here that I gathered from my Lego collection. So let me list off some of the things we see in here. There's a treasure map. There's a picture of the Sahara, which you can't see because it's behind the column. There's a head of an IG droid unit, which must have been one of the first IG droid hunters that somebody cut off his head. There's a rod of Beskar, the perfect color. There's a little blue heart piece, which I included because to me it looks like the Pick of Destiny from the Tenacious D movie. There's a little geode with blue crystal inside. This is the blue Kyber, and this is like the Kyber signet that we see in the show. And finally, in the corner, there's the most important Holy Grail from the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade movie, which is kind of a nod to the show where they had the Sakara stones. So this museum collection can be rotated, or you can fill it with your own parts. And I originally even had a bionicle mask in here, and that mask looked like the skull of a Mandalorian mythosaur, but unfortunately it was far too large, so I had to compromise and just use smaller pieces. So I wanted to talk about the film accurate areas versus these improvised areas. So the most accurate interior area that you'll see is the main tunnel, where we see Luthen walk back and forth various times in the show. So this uses flat silver flexible tubing to represent this hallway, and it uses dark orange tiles to represent the foam panels that are so common in all the Star Wars freighter ships like the Falcon. The big compromise here is that my tunnel, it's not curved the way that it is in the show, and I couldn't do that because there's way too much Technic going on right underneath the floorboards to allow me to create this curve. So instead I just leaned into this error and I allowed it to create more fun spaces. So behind the curve I put in a kitchen and a mess hall, and it has a little herb garden, it has a kitchen sink, and it has various little food machines and a little dining table. I also put in the second powered up control box at the apex of the curve because again that's a very accessible area. So at first, deviating from the original show design, it sort of hurts, but after a while you add these fun parts and you quickly get over that. Now for the third spotlight, I want to focus on this little restroom area. So in the show, we see Andor shaving for a second, using a room that's to the fore of that main hallway in the ship. and this was actually a part that was built into the set for the real show. So he's using a small circular mirror to shave with, and so here I put a chrome sticker tile to recreate this, and I made it into some like a small bathroom sink. I also have mirrors on the kitchen sink, and I have one for the all-important vanity mirror that we see Luthen using in the show. So the vanity mirror is a hexagonal structure, and I recreated that using a series of Lego stop signs. And finally, since I had the front of the bathroom made, I made the back of the bathroom here, and I put a little toilet in, because there just aren't enough of those toilets in Star Wars ships. So I have one more room I want to show you here in the back of the ship, and this is the holodeck room. So in the aft of the ship, or the backside, there's quite a bit of space left, but it's really narrow and it's very vertical. So at first I thought I'd put a large radio desk in there, similar to what Clea uses in the show, but it looked inaccurate and it didn't really make much sense to have this in the ship. So instead I gave Luthen a tactical holodesk, similar to the ones that we see Mon Mothma use when she's doing tactical strategies. Now this allowed me to use a glow-in-the-dark brick, and it allowed me to make a bunch of cool little floating planets for the display. Now unfortunately this room lies underneath the top central roof hatch, which is an anchor for the strength of the ship. So I can only open up this small panel, this small hatch, so that we can look in. But it's kind of like with other Lego ships, this room ends up being really fun when you're building it, but when you finally finish the model, ultimately it gets buried on the inside and it's not very accessible. So that's about it for this video. Thanks for watching, and now I'll show you that last pass through that I promised.